You doing out here? Obviously, you're armed and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night. So, what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business. And part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit.
Welcome back, everybody. I didn't plan on making this video, but I've gotten so many requests for it and so many what I think are perhaps like odd comments over the last couple of days that I think some things kind of need to be addressed, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to focus primarily on what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, but before we do that, I kind of have to address what's going on at the national level. So of course, there's been protests and riots across the country. The reason stated for them, generally speaking, is some sort of social justice, whether it be racial equality or whatever the case may be, and that may be the case during the day. However, from everything I've seen, and if you guys aren't following my Instagram and Facebook pages, Twitter, everywhere else, and what I've been posting, what you'll see is that basically after dark, people aren't there for those issues. They're there to cause problems, for some sort of revolution, to hurt people, to loot, to cause destruction, etc. What their actual ends are varies. And honestly, I think there's a lot of them who are just literally just young and ignorant and don't even know what the heck they're doing. But many of them are communists, many of them are fascists, many of them are anarchists. Regardless of what group they self-identify as, one group I will put them into is an enemy of the United States Constitution. So none of these people in any way want you to have your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, your 10th Amendment, your 14th Amendment. Probably some of them don't want you to have your 13th Amendment. So that's kind of my take on that. And what we've seen also is that because a lot of these instances are occurring in places ran by, I guess we'll call them leftists for the sake of this video, mayors and governors, they're telling their law enforcement officials not to do anything about it. So what we have is business owners, landowners, homeowners, who are calling police and not getting any response. So for instance, in the Kenosha example, there was a reporter from the Daily Wire who did an interview today, and I was watching, and basically the guy who was interviewing him was saying, why didn't they just call the police when this shooting was going on? And if you actually watch the footage, you'll see the police are very slow to react in a timeline. And basically, he had said that he had spoken with several businesses that had been looted or burned. They called the police in the night previous to that, and in every case, the response time was between an hour and 2 hours. That's crazy. So what ends up happening when you have that type of situation is that people, Americans, feel that they have to defend themselves and their property because the government, i.e. police, aren't coming to do so. So that's kind of the baseline for what's going on in this situation. Now we'll sort of jump into the situation. During this video, I'm not going to roll any actual video in. I am going to roll in some still shots that kind of show you what I'm talking about. But the reason for that is that YouTube is deleting videos showing video accounts of what happened during the shooting and the riots. So basically, at the beginning of the night, you saw a group of people who claimed to be libertarians, essentially saying that to the rioters and the protesters that as long as they attacked government buildings and government property and not private stores, that they wouldn't stop them. They were there to protect private property, private stores, private homes, etc. That's an interesting take on on what to do in these situations. I'll leave that for you guys in the comments section. But that was what was said. And one thing that I will say is that as basically the situation devolved, what we saw is that this group of armed people were in no way organized, or at least if they weren't organized well because they did not work as a cohesive team. So that led to some issues as well. So speaking of that, let's talk about the guy who was actually pulling the trigger. His name is Kyle. From what I understand, he's 17 years old and does not live there. So that may come into account, particularly when people are kind of assessing the situation, because there's two ways to assess the situation. One is to take everything that happened the day before, the day of, the evening of the shooting in terms of what this kid Kyle did, and then also just to assess the actual kinetic aspects of what he did as well, and we'll do both. So basically, from everything I read, he works as a lifeguard. He apparently was in some sort of youth police cadet program. He has social media accounts that have hashtags of back the blue and those sorts of things. So from everything I can tell, this is a kid who seemingly wanted to help people, right? So from what I know right now, and again, today is the 27th when I'm filming this, things can all change as more information comes out, as it always does. From what I can tell and from what I've seen, this kid had good intent. During the day, he was seen cleaning up graffiti multiple times. There's images of him assisting people who needed medical aid. One guy was dehydrated from what I could tell. Another guy looked like he had some sort of minor injury that occurred, blunt force injury during the day. And there are videos, you guys can see them online, of him treating these people because he probably has some sort of first aid training as a lifeguard. So again, from what I can tell at this point, I think his intent was good. Was his plan good? Probably not, right? So he is again, a 17-year-old kid, and for those of you guys who are young out there, you don't know what you don't know. Right now, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm, well beyond 17 years old, but that learning curve from a teenager to somebody who, say, in their 30s is a steep one. And you learn a lot during that portion of your life. And I think he just simply didn't understand the situation he was getting himself into. So let's talk about the situation, right? All three people that he ended up shooting, which we'll talk about here in a minute, all of them are criminals. The majority of the people in that crowd, probably criminals. As I said during the intro, during the day, there's probably some folks out there with legitimate beefs and grievances, rather. At midnight, there's probably not. Probably people are drunk, probably people are high on drugs, probably people are criminals and looking to do some bad things. So that's the situation he found himself in, and kind of some sort of like personal life advice, right, that I say, because I talk about guns and self-defense here on the channel, is if you wouldn't go somewhere without a gun, don't go there with a gun, right? So trying to insert yourself into a situation where you otherwise wouldn't be because you have a gun tends to lead to bad outcomes. That was what seemed to happen here, but we'll, again, get into that in more details. Additionally, that advice takes on a whole new meaning when we're talking about open carrying long guns, because concealed carrying a gun, people, generally speaking, they're not going to change how they interact with you. If you're open carrying a rifle, sometimes they do, so just keep that in mind. From everything I've seen so far, it looks like he shot 3 people, one which was kind of isolated, and another 2 that were pretty close together. And so I'm going to sort of break them down piece by piece. So in the first one, it appears that he's running from someone, a person who was on camera earlier in the day asking to be shot. So just kind of take that into account. Again, he was a convicted criminal and a pedophile. These are the kind of people that are out there at night. He appears to be chasing after this kid, Kyle, and has something in a bag. Initially, it was reported that it was a Molotov cocktail. Later on, folks have said, who were there, said it was a brick that was in a bag. Either way, throwing that at him is obviously lethal force. Additionally, continuing to close the gap after that is a threat, right? So you can't really see in this particular shooting. This is definitely the most gray area one of all of the different situations. I'm imagining that the actual store there had some security cameras and more will come out, but as of right now, those haven't been released. And basically the guy gets shot in the head. The reporter that I was speaking about earlier, who was there from the Daily Caller, is actually the guy who took his shirt off and was trying to apply pressure to that wound. However, that person perished. Again, that's kind of the one that's a little bit of the gray because you can't really see it from the camera angles I've seen to date. That may change going on, but it looks like, generally speaking, he did have valid reason to fear for his life and fire his weapon. The second one, basically he was running down the street, tripped and fell, and somebody with a skateboard hit him over the head with it, and that is 100% lethal force, without question. And he fired his rifle back, hitting the man in the chest. That guy grasped his chest, realizing that unlike in video games, there's no reset button, and he was about to die, and of course did die. Shortly after that, at what appears to be the exact same point on the road, another person approached, and I should mention that before the guy got hit in the head with a skateboard, another person jump kicked the kid in the head while he was on the ground. Again, lethal force. And then somebody comes up with a pistol. At that point, he actually waited a good bit until he got really close and was, within like bad breath distance, and fired around basically at contact distance into that guy's bicep, tearing it out. And that person, of course, was holding a firearm, as I mentioned. That person also is a a convicted felon who is prohibited from owning a firearm. He's also a member of a prominent communist organization, and the person who got shot in the chest, I should point out, has a long history of violence as well in terms of assaults. Long rap sheet, right? So again, these are the kind of people that you find yourself dealing with in these sorts of incidents. With that aside, the last two shootings definitely appeared to be justified self-defense. The first one probably was, again, with everything that we know right now. However, he's been charged with first-degree murder, which in my opinion, there's no way that charge will stick. I'm not sure if the DA just did that to quell the crowds or whatever the case may be, but there's 0% chance there was a premeditated murder on this kid's mind, again, from everything we know at this point. Now, some in the media are calling him a vigilante. A lot of other people are calling him a hero. As with most things, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. However, one thing I will say is that in terms of the actual force on force that was used, from everything I've seen, looks to be good to go. As I'm standing out here recording this video, I think it's getting a little bit long, and it's going to be a pretty long video because there's some nuance to everything, right? Everything's not binary and black and white, which we'll talk about in more detail here in just a second, but I want to talk about the gun and the setup because, of course, this is a guns and gear channel, and a lot of people watch this channel for self-defense type advice. So it appears from everything I've seen that he's using a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport Optics Ready model with a sight mark optic on there. Again, from everything I've seen, doesn't look like the optic was really used at all, and basically everything was point shooting. Now, one thing he had going for him, from a gear setup type of perspective, is that he was using a single point sling. So a lot of folks out there are advocates of a 2-point sling, and there's pros and cons to both. But if you guys have watched the channel for a while now, you know I am a fan of hybrid slings that give you the option for the benefits of 2-point and the option for the benefits of single point. But what the sling does is, on a basic level for new folks here, is that it keeps the gun on your body and prevents people from taking it from you. Now, a lot of folks in a 2-point configuration will swim out of it and kind of, you know, use it like this. But if you guys look at some of the stuff that was going on there last night, that may have allowed for his rifle to be taken from him. And think about this while we're on that topic. What if those rioters and looters killed that kid last night? Would it even be in the news? Probably not. So there is that. But one thing he had going for him, like I was saying, is that his sling was set up in a single point configuration. And what that did is it allowed him to use the gun from a lot of very unconventional firing positions, right? I mean, those are as unconventional as they come. And I actually watched a reporter this morning say that it looked like he was firing the rifle like it was a paintball gun, meaning that not firing it from traditional firing positions. And I agree with that. That is what it looked like. And basically that single point sling allowed him to very quickly get shots off vertically from the ground, and then additionally punch out and get muzzle contact distance on that arm shot there. So that is something kind of just to think about in terms of gear selection. If you're going to go out and be in a situation where there's a high threat that someone may or may not take your rifle from you and use it against you, I would definitely recommend looking at a sling. How you set that up, I suppose, is up to you and your skill level. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that one of the reasons I was making this is because I've seen some strange comments, and one of them that kind of goes along this theme is what's happened over the last couple of days, and also, you know, over the last month or two. So, you know, it kind of starts out with the guy in Texas who was trying to defend his store or the sword and got beaten into a pulp and was left, you know, bloodied. And I believe that guy lived, but he was definitely messed up, and I guarantee that dude's limping right now for sure. Followed that up with Portland, where someone was kicked in the head, a guy who, from all reports, was just trying to help someone who had their property stolen to get it back and was not being violent in any way, and that guy got kicked in the head, and you guys have all seen that. That guy was in the hospital unconscious. However, both of those acts 100% were lethal threats to those people, and they would have been justified in using deadly force to stop them, in my opinion. Now, whenever I posted either of those videos or stories on those things, everyone in the comment section just blows up like 100%, say like, oh, I don't go anywhere unless I'm armed. I always have a gun with me because of stuff like this, etc. Right? So with that in mind, you're seeing a lot of people criticizing the people who had guns, who were supposedly attempting to protect businesses, properties, and the people who lived in the area. Right, so you know, it's incongruent, right? So if you're always saying, oh, don't go there without guns, and then when somebody has a gun, you're criticizing them from having a gun, like the same accounts, like I'm seeing social media accounts, the same accounts doing this, right? So that's just it's odd to me, and I think some people kind of need to think it through and maybe kind of look at this through a more consistent type of lens. That said, again, nothing is binary, and there's always a gray area in there for sure. So maybe you guys fall in the middle there, but I just wanted to point that out because I do think it's one of the stranger things that I've been seeing lately. There's a couple thoughts I wanted to point out before we wrap the video up. So number one is going to be the responsibility that we all have whenever we are either armed in our house or are walking around in society armed, right? So that responsibility is huge. There's a lot of people out there, and I see it in the comments all the time, that say that they want to get in a gunfight, they want that CONUS kill, all of that stuff, and I understand a lot of that is joking, right? I get it, right? It's okay to joke, it's okay, it's perfectly fine. But a lot of people are serious about that as well. So I think you just need to understand the ramifications of that, because in this instance, of course, 2 people are dead, and 1 person, has a very severe injury, and probably, in my opinion, more importantly, someone who is intending to do right, their life is forever changed, right? That kid right now, as of when I'm filming this, is sitting in a jail cell, pondering what the heck's going to happen to the rest of his life, probably fearing for his life because, all the information about him being like a young police cadet is out there in the media everywhere. And, prisoners, they're not huge fans of that. Although he did kill a child molester, so that's going to give him some cred in jail, so we'll give him that. But regardless, his life is horrifically changed, at least for the very near future. Who knows what will happen long term? And his parents are right now trying to figure out, do we mortgage our house? I know there's lots of fundraisers going on for him, and all that's great and all, but his life is forever changed. It'll never be the same because he took actions, in my opinion, in defense of himself, in a situation that he didn't have to be in, right? So there is that as well. That's an aspect that a lot of people are debating. He didn't have to be there, 100% did not have to be there, but he put himself there, and then of course everything that happened afterwards happened, and his life is forever changed. So there's just a huge ramification to going out in society every day carrying a gun, because these things that we carry, these tools to protect ourselves and our family, they have enormous consequences should you have to use them. So just I think it's a good reminder for everybody out there to keep that in mind. Now, a lot of folks out there are also saying, there's memes out there about I didn't kill anybody, I just killed communists and stuff like that. I didn't kill any people, I just killed communists. And I want to address that as well, right? So, right, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, these people are literally enemies of the Constitution. Anybody who served in the military has taken an oath to support and defend that document. These people are the enemy. They are the enemy of the Constitution. They are the enemy of the United States as we know it. They want a communist revolution or a French revolution, whatever kind you might think, a Cuban revolution. They want that in America right now, and they want people who have done well to be put in gulags, and they want property to be redistributed. That's just the way it is, right? So if you don't believe that, read a history book, check out the founding documents of Antifa, check out the founding documents of BLM, see it for yourself. It's all there. They're not hiding it. So at what point do we, as people who, again, want to preserve our nation, want to preserve our Constitution, go to the streets and start engaging in violence with these people? I don't know. I think everybody has to make that decision on their own. Like I said, in this instance, this young man ended up doing that. And you can see where his life is going right now. If these people out there who are rioting, looting, keep doing what they're doing, I think there's going to be more and more people out there who are willing to engage in violence with them. Honestly, the way they're acting to me seems like they want that. That may be part of a broader PSYOP campaign. I don't know. We shall see as that develops, but they're basically asking for it. Law enforcement is not doing anything to stop them, and right now their tactics of fear and intimidation over regular people across America, let's just face it, right now their tactics are largely winning. I mean, they're conducting struggle sessions straight out of Mao's step-by-step guide to a revolution. And what comes after the struggle session? Well, violence. That's what comes after the struggle sessions if you look into the history of the Chinese Revolution. So that's what these people are doing. They know what they're doing, at least the leadership does. The people on the ground may not. And at some point, there's going to be a time and a place where good Americans who love their Constitution and don't want to live in a socialist police state are going to have to do something. right? So with that, what I would say is train yourself, prepare yourself, be as ready as you can be should that situation need to arise. Again, I don't know when it will, if it will. I think it probably will in my life, but we'll see. That's it, guys. That's my thoughts on it. I definitely am looking forward to hearing your comments. I think there's going to be comments from across the board. A lot of people might hate what I said. Probably some people will like what I said. But that's my analysis of the situation, the shooting, and everything that's going on as of the 27th, 2020. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. We'll see you in the next video.